What are 3 habits or mindsets you can cultivate to help you on the recovery journey, or at least speed up the journey? Look, I know you want to overcome these symptoms as quickly as possible, and you're just like, what do I do? What's the answer? And while these things are useful and good, it's very important to start developing habits and cultivate different mindsets, because believe it or not, this is a huge part of people's recovery journey, and it's often a blind spot. I see a lot of people getting stuck in the cycle, even though they know exactly what to do, because they've developed habits and mindsets over the years, months, days, and that's what's preventing them from getting to recovery. So it's really important to cultivate these mindsets, these habits, so that you can actually focus on overcoming your symptoms. I've helped people around the world, and oftentimes when I'm telling people what to do, but they're still not making progress, it's because they have these habits or mindsets in place. So without further ado, let's crack into the video. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the habits and mindsets that you need to overcome your symptoms. However, if you really want to know how to overcome the symptoms, like what do I do? Like exactly what are the steps here? I'll put a link down below to the desensitization blueprint. Essentially, all the symptoms that you're experiencing is due to a hyperstimulated nervous system, which means your nervous system is very sensitive. And because of that, any small stressor, any small trigger creates an over-exaggerated response in the body. And this is why you're getting very intense, intrusive thoughts, physical symptoms, feelings of unreality, the depersonalization, the derealization. And so the biggest step is, once you figure out lifestyle adjustments, but you feel like you're not really making that much progress, it's because your nervous system is sensitized. Now, the first habit or mindset that I would challenge you to start cultivating today is self-awareness, right? Becoming aware of yourself, being aware of the things that you're doing. Now, self-awareness is kind of a weird concept, and you're wondering, how does it apply to the physical symptoms? How does this apply to the intrusive thoughts? I feel like I'm sick. I feel like there's something wrong. What is self-awareness going to do here? Anxiety disorders is a disorder of doing. Meaning it's not you feeling the symptoms that's the problem, actually. Yes, for you, it feels like the symptoms are the problem, and what's keeping these symptoms alive and constant and chronic is because you're always doing something to make it go away. You see, you're used to thinking, okay, if I'm feeling something, I do something, right? So I'm feeling it, whether I do something or not, how does that affect what's happening to me, right? If somebody punches me in the arm, whether I say ow or why or whatever, I still got punched in the arm. Why does it matter? But in anxiety, it does matter, because how you react determines whether you get punched in the arm again. Meaning, how you react determines whether you experience symptoms in the future or not. And so one of the biggest takeaways you can focus on is becoming just self-aware. Rather than trying to judge your symptoms, trying to figure it out, why is this happening, trying to avoid, trying to fight, trying to fix, trying to get frustrated by your symptoms, always focusing on your symptoms instead, just be aware of everything that you're doing. The only purpose of being self-aware is just to be self-aware. This is ironically why a lot of people talk about meditation as being helpful for anxiety. Now, I've made videos about how meditation doesn't help with anxiety symptoms, because the way people meditate is technically wrong. They're using meditation as a sophisticated tool to make the symptoms go away. And the reason why self-awareness works is that it helps you realize when you're doing things to keep the anxiety alive. See, in the mentorship, our biggest focus is to help people overcome their symptoms, but more importantly, making sure they become their own guides. However, if they haven't developed this self-awareness ability in themselves, well then what's gonna happen is, even if we get them better, they're gonna fall back in the cycle. And no matter what I do, I won't be able to get them out, no matter what I tell them to do, because they are not aware. They have too many blind spots and not realizing that what they're doing is causing them to fall back into the cycle. So one of the biggest things you can do is start being self-aware today. And self-awareness, it's a weird concept, but it basically goes like this. You're aware of what you're doing. That's it. So if you're talking to somebody, you're aware you're talking to somebody. That's it. Full stop. Don't try to think your way into this. Wait, how do I know that? Because you're still thinking, right? Self-awareness goes beyond the mind. Self-awareness is being aware of the mind, of the brain, of the physical symptoms, of the action that you're doing. Now, the second habit or mindset that you should cultivate in helping you in the recovery journey is learning to take responsibility. Okay, here's what I mean. I see a lot of people, not even just with anxiety, who don't take responsibility based on their situations that they're in. They'll always have someone to blame, or they'll deal with external forces that have kept them in the position that they have been. And maybe that's the same thing for you. Maybe you're in the cycle because nobody explained to you why you're experiencing anxiety symptoms. Maybe you had a bad experience with a doctor. Maybe you had some traumatic situation that made you fall into the cycle. All these things are external and they were out of your control. However, part of recovering and overcoming these symptoms is learning and take responsibility over what you can control. I hear this happen all the time. When I tell people, hey, do you want to recover? Yes. How do you want to recover? Well, I want to be able to recover for myself. I don't want to rely on external things. Okay, the first thing you need to do is take responsibility on the fact that you're here because of what you've been doing. But a lot of people have a tough time doing that because they feel like if I'm taking responsibility, that means I'm assigning blame. Blame and responsibility are not the same thing. The purpose of taking responsibility is realizing what you have control over and what you don't. And the second you focus on what you do have control over, well, that's what leads to freedom. Responsibility is essentially the ability to respond, which is very ironic, right? Because so much of anxiety recovery has nothing to do with you feeling the symptoms. It's almost like the symptoms don't matter. What matters is your response. Right? So it's very interesting. People say, I want to recover. Well, your recovery is based on your response, but people don't like that. They don't want to take responsibility over their symptoms. They want to rely on this coping crutch. And while these things can help and they help support you on the journey, the focus is on how do you respond? There's no substitute for that. Taking responsibility is going to be one of the most greatest things that's going to enhance your life, not just with recovery, but onwards. I have things going wrong in my life all the time, and I have a natural impulse to blame other things. Well, this happened because I had this person on my team, or this happened because that person was negligent. And at the end of the day, I have to take account and take in the fact that I was the one that put that person there. And once I start realizing and taking responsibility and stop pushing blame on other things, now I can actually do something to overcome this. But if people are too focused on blaming their symptoms or blaming external things, well then how are you going to recover? You find this a lot on forums, by the way. You see a lot of people that are trying to story top each other, talking negatively, talking about how their symptoms are worse than others, because what it does is that it keeps them in victim mentality and they don't have to take responsibility. And believe it or not, feeling like a victim feels good. I know it feels very ironic. Nobody wants to feel powerless, but it actually feels good because it feels like this has happened to you and that, this is not your fault and there's nothing you can do. So it absolves any sort of responsibility. So the second thing really is take responsibility over where you're at right now. That doesn't mean blame. That doesn't mean it's your fault. You're in this situation because maybe people didn't tell you about this. I know I was in this situation because nobody explained to me what a panic attack was. But I also had to take responsibility over the fact that I was in this cycle because of how I was reacting. I was reacting in fear and fixing and trying to fight my symptoms and trying to focus on my symptoms and trying to get frustrated with my symptoms. And these things were keeping my nervous system sensitized. So once I started taking responsibility, I started realizing, hey, I'm doing these 5 things. I need to stop that. And I just need to let this be there and let it pass. And then when I realized that was in my control, now I felt more in control of my recovery. Now I felt in more control of my life. I started developing core confidence in my body and my mind. I started going out because even if something happened that was outside of my control, I knew I was able to respond, and I knew just through my response, everything was going to be okay. And then the third habit and mindset I would really focus on helping you cultivate that I think is really good for you on your recovery journey is learning to let go. This has a lot to do with principle 2, which is taking responsibility, but realizing that you being focused and controlling is actually what's keeping you in the cycle. See, what happens is you might be experiencing panic attacks, experiencing breathing issues, you might be experiencing palpitations, intrusive thoughts. And because you feel like you're not in control in your body or your mind, what's going to happen? You're actually going to try to be more controlling. You might realize that you're not even going certain places because what happens if you have a panic attack? What happens if you can't escape? What happens if you can't do this? What happens if you can't do that? You can't leave. So you're trying to be so controlling that you start limiting your life. You start avoiding places. So a big part of recovery is not learning to be more controlling, but learning to let go. Letting go in itself is a skill, right? We live in a society right now where if we want something, it's like we focus on it, we grind, we work harder, we do this, we do that, we do everything more, right? And while that applies to certain situations, that doesn't apply to anxiety recovery. Anxiety recovery is the opposite, is learning to let go, letting go of control, and having faith that everything is going to be okay. But you can't do that if you don't know what's happening, if you don't know how to respond, and you're not willing to throw yourself in this situation because of a fear of what if. Again, one of the biggest things I'd focus on is learn the mechanics of what's happening, understand how the fight or flight response is creating these symptoms, learn how intrusive thoughts work, learn how to desensitize your nervous system, learn how the process of overcoming these symptoms look like, what the recovery journey looks like, and then start letting go. Stop trying to fix it. Remember what I said in the beginning of the video. This is a disorder of doing. You're constantly doing something, and that's what's keeping this alive. The disorder isn't you experiencing the symptom. That's actually the effect. That's the consequence of it. But your focus is on the consequence. But if you want to get into the root cause, you have to realize that there are certain things you're doing that's keeping this alive. And once you realize those things, then it's about not doing those and letting go. Now it's about regaining your life. Let it be the passenger. Let it just say, your symptoms are here, it's there, and you just say, that's fine, come with me. Let's have the symptoms with me, but I'm gonna continue living my life. So these are the 3 habits and mindsets that are really important in your recovery journey. These are not habits or mindsets that a lot of people talk about. They want that quick fix, that instant relief. But if you're really looking for long-lasting solutions, if you're really looking to overcome this is something you're going to have to cultivate. Everybody I've helped recover had these things. And everybody that gets stuck in whatever situation, whether that's in the program, whether that's watching my content, whether that's watching somebody else on anxiety recovery, if they're stuck, it typically is because of these 3 things, or they don't know what to do, or they're getting, misinformation there too. So really focus on this. And again, these are kind of blind spots that when someone's going through the recovery journey, they may not be able to see very easily. And because you're in such a dark place and you're in such a vulnerable place, it's hard to see these things and from an objective manner because you're so in this fight or flight mode. So like I say, I always recommend find a guide to guide you on the journey, somebody who has your best interest, which is focusing on helping you overcome these symptoms and helping you realize where you're messing up. Again, the only reason why I'm saying it like this is because recovery truly is in your control. More than ever, no matter how long I've been doing this, one thing becomes firm, like more and more over time, which is recovery is in your hands. This is yours. Doesn't matter who you work with, doesn't matter what you do. As long as you have the right information, it's very important for you to apply it. If you do not apply it, there is no excuse. There's no workaround. Nothing will save you. I know that sounds a little dark, but I mean, the truth is that, look, you want recovery to be in your hands. I guarantee you. You don't want it to be in anyone else's hands. You don't want it in my hands. You don't want it in someone else's hands. Somebody you're seeing on Instagram, somebody you're seeing on YouTube, whether it's your therapist or whatever. Recovery is in your hands. Everything is just a way to get you to taking control over your life. And once you start realizing that, then it's like, well, if I can recover from anxiety, what else can't I do in life? What other sort of limiting beliefs do I have? If I can do this, what else can't I do? Recovery was very empowering for me because number 1 was it helped me realize that if I can overcome anxiety, I can really do anything. And the second thing was life does become kind of a walk in the park. I've actually had more stressful situations happen after, but I was able to handle it better because of the skills that I had from anxiety recovery. And because of that, I not only feel more empowered, but I can handle more stress. And really, life does become enjoyable. So I hope this video helps, and I'll see you in the next one.